And welcome to the first Wheelock College of Education and Human Development's Equity Series webinar for the Spring 21 semester. Our webinar today is using a partnership model to support college access and student success. And we're really excited to have a great panel and broad representation from Boston University to participate in our webinar this afternoon. First, just a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded. It will, in about 10 days, be available on the Wheelock College of Education's YouTube channel, and later in the month will be aired on BNN, the Boston Neighborhood Network. The chat function for this webinar has been disabled. We would ask that you please use the Q&A function for any questions that you may have. For questions that we can easily answer via typing the answer, we will do so. Otherwise, we would very much like to save questions until the end, since we have a lot of content that we want to make sure that we get through in the hour that we have with you this afternoon. So I think that covers it with housekeeping. My name again is Mike Dennehy. I serve as the Executive Director of College Access and Student Success in the Wheelock College of Education. And we have a number of panelists with us this afternoon. And those panelists will introduce themselves as we progress through our presentation. We do want to spend some time explaining the offices that are involved in this presentation. There are a number of offices that also are really critical to this partnership that are not represented on this panel, but as we progress through the presentation a little bit, I'll insert kind of the role of those offices and some shout outs to some of those other BU campus offices that are involved. First, to give you a little bit of an overview of the Wheelock College Access and Student Success Office, it really is comprised of 4 key areas. Our research branch, which is led by Laurie Pohl, who's a faculty in our higher ed leadership program. Then we have a graduate program that works with graduate students in the Wheelock College of Education and is a partnership with the American College of Teacher Education. It's our Holmes programs. Our undergraduate programs, which are managed by Claire Fitzgerald, who's our undergraduate program manager and is a panelist this afternoon. And that's really where we're gonna be spending a lot of time during our presentation. And then our pre-college programs, which include some trio programs, Upper Bound Math Science, which Reggie Jean is the director for, as well as a literacy program called Build, for which we partner with the Office of Student Employment on some of our pre-college programs. But the services for college access and student success are really in those 4 main buckets. And I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, John McEachern, who's the Director of Undergraduate Admissions, to kind of give you an overview of the admissions partners in this and the folks that are involved on their end of things.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for participating. Again, John McEachern, Director of Admissions at BU. And I think it's important to understand, as Mike said, there are so many folks. It's a really collaborative effort to get to the point that we are now, and as we look to grow our efforts. I'll focus specifically on admissions and the folks who report up through Kelly Walter, who's our Dean of Admission and Associate Vice President for Enrollment. And another panelist on this presentation is Brittney Sampson, and she is in charge of our partnerships, really, and she is coordinating with everyone in our office. Anyone who recruits in a territory, works with students, their families, community-based organization, high school counselors, mentors of students, really helps our staff work closely and develops these partnerships. But she works in conjunction with other folks on the recruitment team in our office, folks who work on campus and off campus, and she has a team that she works with as well, as a team of 3 students. So Brittney will tell you more a bit about that organization, but she's also working with the folks who manage the selection of admissions and scholarship. So that's a big part of what we do, and we're in the throes of that right now as we're evaluating applications for the upcoming class of 2025. But we also have a marketing wing within admissions, and they push out a lot of content, whether that be through digital, social, the publications that we work with. We have an international team, but then also reporting up through Kelly is the College Advising Corps, and they've really been instrumental in some of our partnering in terms of getting messaging out, whether it's to the BPS, Boston Public Schools, or through other programming that we've offered. So it really is a collaborative effort within ENSA. There are many enrollment service enrollment services and student administration. There are a number of other folks that are involved, but it really is, it does take a village. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laurie Pohl.
Thank you, John and Mike. If we could advance to the next slide, please. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and to be in such great company here on this panel. I think one of the things, and from those two slides, I wish there was this bridging function, because it really is the connection between the college access and student success function and admissions that we're really trying to highlight here, and our efforts to make that as seamless and as fruitful as possible for our students. What I wanted to talk a little bit about is, as this slide says, the need, the issues, and the model. And very briefly, if you're in this webinar, you probably understand the need for programs that are designed to encourage students, to facilitate them to fulfill their potentials, to fulfill their dreams, and to achieve their goals. The need, as many of you know, the population of students is changing. It has been changing, and it will change. We'll be a minority population soon. Many more low-income students are filling the pipeline as high school graduates and into college. The fact of the matter is, though, that especially at private selective research universities like BU and at many other colleges and universities, undergraduate enrollment is skewed towards white and wealthy students. And it's not simply that there's this burgeoning pipeline, this burgeoning population of students that we perhaps aren't reaching and aren't enrolling, those being low income, underrepresented minority students, et cetera, first generation students. It's not simply that there are many more of them that we need to get into college, but the fact of the matter is that there are disproportionate impacts and disproportionate participation rates at every point along the way, from first point of contact through recruitment, through enrollment, and on into their college careers and graduation. So at every point along the way, we are seeing disproportionate rates of achievement, not achievement, but of access and success for certain populations of students. And we wanted to do better. So that the need is there. And yet the issues are that most of our student recruitment methodologies and tools rely on things like standard test scores and demographic markets that sort of reinforce the status quo. So how do we figure out which students to go out to recruit? If we could come back to the previous slide, please. Thank you. So how do we figure that out? Well, a lot of the tools are geared to sort of reinforce that status quo, that white, wealthier student population are going to be overrepresented in those tools. Many programs and resources, the seminal research and onward was based on students in a traditional program at a predominantly white institution. So a majority student in a four-year program at a predominantly white institution. And we know that simply isn't the case for most students in our country today, and certainly it wasn't even then. And students from underserved populations are further underrepresented. So that's the double in practices and programs that correlate with success in and beyond college. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with the program model. So what we have tried to do through this model is to change the recruitment model by partnering with community-based organizations. That's primarily through the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, but it's in partnership with us because we help to talk with those folks to try to tell them what we can offer their students when they partner with us, and we help to enroll and ensure their success. That is one of many things, I should say, that undergraduate admissions is doing in terms of changing the recruitment model. But here we're focused on this mentoring partnership that we'll be talking about. We need to change the support model to ensure a smooth transition from admission to matriculation. We want to change the success model by providing mentorship and encouraging students' participation in practices and practicing behaviors that correlate with success. So this is, and we want to do everything in ways that are data informed, and that mirror, that sort of adapt best practices to this environment. So what we're trying to do is apply research to this, to what we do, make sure what we're doing is of A, of high quality, and B, that it is meeting the needs, the goals that we've designed, and is best serving our students. I should say that the impetus for this, this presentation was a conversation that was had between college access and student success, undergraduate admissions, and a potential community-based organization. And the community-based organization was a little surprised at the types of programs that we'd offer our students, the way that we offer the mentoring, the programming that goes along with the work of college access and student success. They were a little surprised that this was happening at a private research university of the size of BU. So we thought we should think a little, so reflect a little bit on that, and thus became this the impetus for this particular presentation. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Mike.
Great, thanks, Laurie. And I'm going to expand a little bit on Laurie's discussion of our program model as the PowerPoint catches up, to talk a little bit specifically about our undergraduate program model. And as I said at the outset, there are a lot of offices that really contribute to our work. Principally, I would like to acknowledge the role that financial aid plays in all of this. Financial aid makes it possible for students to be here and to be on campus. We work really closely with them throughout a student's matriculation at BU, the University Service Center, the Study Abroad Office, the Educational Resource Center, the Center for Career Development, undergraduate research opportunities programs are just a couple of our year in and year out partners that are really critical to this work. But today, what we really want to do is focus on that handoff between pre-college and undergrad, and really admissions and college access and student success. That's where that handoff happens, and that mentor matching and the model that we're going to talk about today. So our goal is to work with existing BU structures and offices. So we don't want to create things from scratch when we don't have to. In fact, frequently when we host events, if the topic is internships, we'll bring multiple campus offices that are involved in that. So not just internships, but undergraduate research opportunities. The fellowships office will come in. So we really try to bring in those campus content experts into a session, into information sessions, do training with our mentors with those offices, so that students and faculty staff mentors are speaking with the campus experts on those topics. The other thing that we really try to do heavily is promote NESE's high impact practices. So these are the non-classroom activities that have been found to have positive associations with students' learning and retention, and also their success post-graduation. And then lastly, folks of all ages learn better when they have access to peers who've shared those experiences. That's true for high school students as well as undergrads. So we really try to highlight undergrads who have participated in those high impact practices, as well as other experiences on campus, to be part of those presentations. So if we have a session on study abroad, we have students who've done that study abroad session, because they'll think about the things that, you know, we as campus administrators may not think about, such as, yeah, you really may want to work during the year to save up money to be able to go sightseeing when you're abroad. So by having those student voices as part of events and workshops that we run, it enriches the information and also really helps make it more accessible to the undergrads with whom we work. So how did all of this work get started? Now, I'm not going to go in detail into this big timeline, but the purpose of it is to really see that this hasn't been a recent project, right? Boston University has been invested in this work going back to the 1970s with the formation of what was known as the Boston Scholars, is now renamed in 2014 as the 13 as the Menino Scholars, after Mayor Menino. But this work at BU really dates back to then. and started with the full tuition scholarship for Boston Public High School graduates. I am a BPS alum. I came to Boston University through that same scholarship. So that informs my experience as an administrator and also the students whom I serve as an advisor to. And really out of those early experiences in the 1970s, leading into the 80s, our office was called, within the College of Education, was called the Boston Public Schools Collaborative Office, and it was led by Ruth Shane at the time, who was my advisor as a Menino scholar. And that work really involved reaching out to the Boston Public Schools. We were, continue a partnership with Brighton High School, but it was the headmaster at the time, Juliet Johnson, who in a conversation with Ruth asked, what can we do as a university partner? And on that list were 3 things that Juliet had mentioned to Ruth, and one of them was to write an upper bound grant to work with Brighton High School students, and we worked with a number of other high schools as well. And so really that, at least for the College of Education, was those early stages of post-secondary institution partnering with K-12 institution around issues of college access. And so Reggie Jean, who's the director of our Upper Bound and Upper Bound Math Science program, is going to talk a little bit about what they do. It is a federally funded TRIO program, but really for the College of Education's work, it was the creation of that program and it coming to BU was formative in that experience. And we all know as college access providers that our work intersects in a lot of ways. And so our office's first involvement with POSSE was actually with our Upper Bound program partnering to POSSE when it came to Boston in 1999, and they were looking for community-based partners to nominate students. And, those of you who are familiar with the POSSE program know they cast a really wide net in their geographic areas and reach out to as many local partners as they possibly can. And so our office's relationship with POSSE actually started in the 90s, in the late 90s. And so what I won't spend a lot of time on is the rest of this time frame because Laurie, John, and Brittney are going to talk in greater detail. And the POSSE program, you see, came to BU the same year that our Upper Bound Math Science grant came. Laurie was the vice president of enrollment, and she'll talk a little bit about, under her leadership, the rationale for bringing POSSE to Boston University, and then kind of everything that's happened since then. But I do want to spend a minute having Reggie talk a little bit about our Upper Bound experience, how it works, because it really is a pre-college example within Boston University of that internal and external outreach. So I'm going to turn it over to Reggie to talk a little bit about our program. You might be muted,
Thanks,
Reggie.
Mike. So Reggie Jean, the director for Upper Bound and Upper Bound Math Science. I appreciate that handoff, Mike. And so, as Mike says, we're a federally funded TRIO program. And our program at BU specifically works with students in Boston and Chelsea public schools who are either from low-income backgrounds or are first-generation college potential to help them go to and be successful in college. Students, our work is designed to help students work to be prepared to go to any college. So we're set at BU, but it's not like a feeder program into Boston University. We're working with students to find that fit to go to any college that they desire, that has what they are looking for in higher education. So in that work, we collaborate with Boston University Admissions Office so that Upper Bound and Upper Bound Math Science students are aware of BU admissions events. So like the summer experience event that takes place typically in August is a chance for Boston Public School students to do a mini college awareness conference. And so we're informing students, and BU Admissions is reaching out to us as partners to make sure students are aware of such events. Admissions also comes to visit our program to deliver information sessions on college admissions, financial aid, not as a pitch to Boston University, but just as an awareness piece of, these are different pieces of admissions, of scholarships, of financial aid, some trends that they should be aware of, how to apply, and answer some of those questions that again, as experts, they can provide that insight into the programs, just like Mike talked about, engaging those experts. And so good collaboration within, Boston University, it helps Upward Bound meet its program objectives. So we work with other BU units as well. We connect with the College Advising Corps on students that we share, on completing their college applications, completing their financial aid applications. The Center for Career Development and the Dean of Students Office and the Educational Resource Center, they're presenting on several topics. So you see the picture here of J.K. Pelletier at the ERC, who was doing a workshop on how to avoid procrastination to our students this past November. We also partner with BU STEM faculty. They deliver hands-on activities for Upward Bound Math Science students and several other BU units like BU School of Medicine, the Ryan Center for Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation, Engineering, Production, and Innovation Center. They all serve as internship sites for our rising seniors. So in a way, these partners are helping us expose students to those high impact practices that we're talking about, so that when they go to college, it sort of normalizes these experiences for them. And then finally, in terms of numbers, since 2000, we've had about 38 former Upward Bound Math Science participants who have enrolled at BU as undergrads. And almost every student that has come to BU has graduated from Boston University. You see the picture here of about 5 students of the Upward Bound Math Science alum who are at BU. We had a nice dinner recently. And with one student, they did undergrad at BU, and now they're a graduate student at BU. So these are some of the ways that that Mike has highlighted in terms of not reinventing the wheel and taking advantage of some of the opportunities through partnerships. I'm going to turn it over to Brittney, who's going to talk to you more about BU admissions practices and in terms of how they approach partnerships.
Thank you, Reggie. And I think something that has been salient and been mentioned is access and our commitment to access. And in order to increase access, we are partnering with different organizations to do so. So BU has partnered with a variety of organizations across the country to increase access for underrepresented populations, for first-generation students, for students who've been historically marginalized or excluded from institutions of higher education. And in order to increase representation at BU, but just again, this access conversation in higher ed in general, we do have to partner with organizations. And the first step is identifying what are our needs. What populations do we want to enhance? What are some maybe blind spots that we think that we could really improve on? And in order to do so, we need to collaborate with organizations. So we find organizations that have similar values, visions, and goals, and that we can make sure that that mutual goal of increasing representation is met. Additionally, we will meet with different organizations to make sure that they are getting their needs met and that they are being able to fulfill their commitment to their students, because of course we want students to be really excited about going to college and creating this college going culture. Some of our touch points will start with outreach. So it will begin in our recruitment stage where our admissions representatives and folks who are traveling, as well as what John mentioned around our marketing materials, we're increasing conversations about Boston University, but again, about college. Our partnerships and our partner organizations will have our students go to campus so that they can meet with current students and they can learn about Boston University, they can learn about the different resources, but most importantly, they can envision themselves as college-going students on this campus. And then that other piece is, again, once these students matriculate to campus, it is about working with infrastructure and existing organizations on campus to make sure that they are supported and retained. And my colleagues, Laurie and John, they're going to talk a little more specifically about the different organizations we've partnered with, as well as some of the things we've been able to achieve.
Thank you, Brittney. I wanted to talk a little bit about Posse and our work with the Boston Public Schools. And as Mike mentioned, you know, our work started back with the Boston Public Schools with the then Boston Scholars Program and now Menino Scholars Program. And one facet of that I wanted to highlight is, or two facets actually. One is that there was orientation and mentoring and sort of a real intensive and purposeful effort to look at that transition process from high school to college, even back in the 70s. And that's carried forward. The second piece was, again, partnership between admissions and the then Boston Collaborative Office about outreach, about selection, about coaching students and getting them enthusiastic about coming to Boston University. So those two sort of foundational pieces have carried through everything that we do. So when we come to Posse, one of the reasons we looked at Posse was because it had been a proven success. There was a good body of research and a good body of evidence that suggested that this model was something that we wanted to invest in. We wanted these students on our campuses. Here was a model that had proven successful in not only getting them to college, but through college and successful beyond. So that sort of initial partnership with Posse, you know, some things we learned, again, that the importance of mentoring. The mentors for Posse, as many of you know, there are some mentors in this audience. I'm confident there's at least one of them on this panel, is an intensive mentorship program, but the mentoring component is not there to be the problem solver. It's there to enable problem solving. And it's to enable students to figure things out and to be that, but also to be that safety net. The other thing was the importance of a cohort. That's something we've carried through, whether it's within a program or cross programs, trying to build that cohort model so students have each other to lean on and talk to and learn from. And the third piece is something that we noticed in research and in the data that suggests that when students from traditionally underserved populations, so a low-income student, a first-gen student, a racial or ethnic minority student, when they're in college, we see that they are sort of underrepresented in things like study abroad and internships and research opportunities, capstone projects, other kinds of activities that are co-curricular. They join their academic programs, and they're also proven with data to enhance student success long-term through college and beyond. And so we wanted to find ways to promote engagement with those activities so that students could fulfill their dreams, to fulfill their own potential. The data show that even when students said, yes, I'm going to do an internship, yes, I'm going to study abroad, when they entered college, fewer of them were actually doing that by the time they graduated. And we wanted to find a way to change that dynamic. So we built some of what Claire will talk about later is how we actually do that. Posse informed some changes to our relationship with the Boston Public Schools and to the Boston Scholars Program. Again, how can we expand it? How can we make it better? And this actually, this project, I think it was 2000, I'm going to date myself. I don't know quite the date, mid 2000s, late 2000s. There was a change in that program to award the Menino Scholars and to open up a need-based no loan program for all graduates of the Boston Public Schools. So in addition to the financial aid piece, there was also again, a commitment to mentoring, to cohort building, to opening up opportunities, spaces of opportunities for these students on campus. So those threads that we learned early on with Menino, then into Posse, we're now carrying forward into our work with the Boston Public Schools, and as John and Brittney will talk about, with some other more recent partnerships.
Thanks, Laurie. And there really have been a couple of inflection points, and Mike outlined how this all got started in the early 70s, and Laurie did a great job talking about what happened when we brought Posse on as a partner bringing students to BU's campus. and the BPS. But we also brought in Yes Prep around that same time. And each of these organizations, so I'd say the 2008 timeframe was an inflection point. And then in the last 5 years, we've also had another where we've brought on Chicago Scholars, the Charles Hayden Foundation, Philadelphia Futures, and IDEA. And so you've got the POSSE example is a large national organization. You've got the local regional with Boston. Yes Prep was an opportunity to learn about a regional program that had Brittney talked about. We understood what our needs were and realized, hey, there's an opportunity there that had a very robust support system for their alumni, which was very important to us. And that was a big driving factor as we decided who it was that we wanted to partner with. I mean, we work with hundreds of community-based organizations every year. Certainly, we don't have the capability to partner with all of them. So really thinking about those who can support their students moving forward was important to us. So Chicago Scholars is a similar type of program, but the Hayden Foundation was a bit of a departure, where it wasn't necessarily, it was, a somewhat of a regional organization, but it started innocuously enough with an invitation from the then CEO, Ken Marin, to go speak with the principals at the high schools, especially in New York, in the New York City area that received Charles Hayden Foundation funding. And so it was an opportunity for us to learn from the principals what they wanted for their students, what type of support they were looking for. And as Laurie mentioned, we had this track record of building out this collaboration between college access and student success with our recruitment efforts and being able to promise those students this cohort model, this opportunity to connect. But one of the things that we've had to grapple with, and Brittney outlined this nicely, is our recruitment efforts. How do we get in front of the students who have not, to say, had the same opportunities through recruitment to learn about institutions like Boston University? So we set out a plan to begin recruiting sophomores and juniors at the high schools receiving Charles Hayden Foundation funding, and with an information session in New York. Then we were able to use the Hayden Foundation offices to interview students who were nominated by the principals and the college counselors of these schools. In between that, we were able to bring students to campus through Mosaic overnight program on our campus. And then fast forward to those students who we were able to interview. Those who were admitted were able to come to our multicultural community weekend, where they were introduced to who would be their mentors for that cohort. So building in that cohort model where a group of 6 or 7 students would come in and have that person who could help them problem solve, not to problem solve for them, like Laurie said, but to connect them with the resources around Boston University was really, really influential. And I will say that, and Claire can speak more to this, that the Hayden Foundation has been really invested in the work that we do, connecting with the college access student success, being a tremendous resource to us in admissions and enrollment as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brittney, who can speak about one of our other partnerships.
Thanks, John. Just as Laurie and John have mentioned, it's been a multi-tier approach. So specifically with our IDEA Scholars and our IDEA program, that's one of our newest partnerships, the newest partnership that we were able to form. And what's nice about this partnership is it came in conjunction from folks talking with the regional representative. We've had a regional representative, Kaylin Walton, who's been with us for the last 4 years and has really made great strides within the Texas region. And she's been visiting these schools and visiting these students. And this was something that came up in conversation of how can we do more and how can we collaborate? And that led to a larger conversation of bringing the VP of college programs and their alumni program and partnership programs to campus to meet with stakeholders on campus, including financial aid, including admissions, including the College Access and Student Success Office, to really collaborate and see what are the things that already exist on campus and what we're doing, and what are the ways in which we can work together to increase opportunities for students. And we had already seen these students on campus, but just not in a formalized partnership. So that was awesome and just a great opportunity for us to continue to expand in our access work. And the nice thing again is that it is, because it's multi-tiered, it's coming from so many different angles. And a lot of our partnerships will come from just conversations with community-based organizations that we've developed a relationship with over time, and thinking about how can we continue to support your students, how can we increase interest, and also make sure that they feel really good when they arrive to campus. And our Claire and Mike, you'll talk more about the specific supports and what's being offered for our students once they're here.
Thanks, Brittney. John and Laurie for providing that great background in terms of how these partnerships have evolved. I thought I'd transition to give folks a snapshot of who are our students, how many do we have in each of these programs, what is the racial and ethnic composition of those students along with gender. So this screen will give you a snapshot just to explain a couple of things. One is you'll notice that this is the Boston Public Schools Community Scholars Program. You'll notice that there's a big jump from the number of freshmen to the number of upperclassmen that we have. That jump is principally in part due to that program in 2017 was expanded to include any Boston Public School student who transfers to Boston University from another post-secondary institution is offered that same full financial need without loan financial aid package that a traditional freshman would have if they were entering Boston University. So that almost practically doubled the number of BPS community scholars that we get in any given year when you factor in the transfer opportunities that happen a couple times a year. So that's why you see that big jump happens. It's not that we're admitting fewer BPS community scholars, it's that these other classes get filled out with transfer students as they progress through their undergraduate experiences. The other things that I would like to point out in this slide is that you'll see zeros here for Chicago scholars, as well as Hayden, IDEA, and Philly. It's because those partners don't yet have students in those cohort levels. So, that's just some background there. Our biggest program by far is BPS Community, followed by Menino, followed by Posse within our smaller cohort programs. And then I want to be conscious of time. The graphs that you see here below, the orange bars are Boston University data for those data points. The blue bars are college access and student success enrollment. You'll see that in terms of race and ethnicity data, that that our office serves students who are predominantly students of color, especially when compared to the university averages. And then we serve slightly more male students than in a particular BU cohort. The other slide I want to do before we kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts of mentoring is to give you a sense of how these partnerships have grown. And with that growth has come a need for more BU faculty staff mentors. So that you see, this is where we were at in 2017-18 school year and where we were at now. It's a significant number of more students, but even a more significant number of mentors to work with students. And mentors come from across all of BU's schools and colleges, including the Charles River campus and the Med campus. This will give you an idea of how many mentors that we have by program and the composition of those mentors. So how many are faculty, how many are staff? The majority of mentors are staff, but we have a sizable number of faculty who serve as mentors as well. So at this point, I know I see some questions in the Q&A that we'll take a peek at, but I do want to turn it over to Claire Fitzgerald, who's our undergraduate program manager, who can talk about the nature of the mentoring that we do.
Thanks, Mike. Like Mike said, my name is Claire Fitzgerald. I'm the undergraduate program manager for college access and student success here in the Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we mean by mentoring at BU. So when we recruit mentors, when we train mentors, when we talk to folks about mentoring, we really want the mentors who are BU faculty and BU staff to work with a whole student. The mentors are recruited to work with these students their entire undergraduate career at BU. That can be the average of 4 years. Some students take less time, perhaps our transfer students. Some students take a little bit more time, but the mentor is there, not just as a transitional coach to take the student from high school to college, but really like through that potential sophomore slump, helping them find those internships as sophomores and juniors, talking to them about their career plans and goals as seniors, and just really focusing on the student as a person and as a potential future leader in our community. So we have 3 tiers of mentoring depending on the partnership that the student is admitted through. So for our BPS community service scholars, the mentors in this program typically work with anywhere from 1 to 3 students at a given time. The mentors meet with these students generally 2 to 4 times per semester, once at the beginning of the semester, once at the end of the semester, and then 1 or 2 times in the middle around midterms, just to, check in, see how the student is doing. These interactions pre-pandemic were usually in person. Now we've had to pivot like everybody else. Most of our mentors are meeting with their students virtually, either over Zoom or over the phone, but still getting that same sort of quality interaction between the students and the faculty or staff mentor. The next tier of mentoring is for all of those small cohort partnerships that we talked about. So for the Yes Prep Impact Scholars, the Chicago Scholars, the Hayden Scholars, the Philly Futures Scholars, and the Idea Scholars, all of these students receive a similar type of mentoring. So the mentor for each of these programs works with one cohort in a class year. So all of the first year Hayden Scholars, for example, have their own mentor. All of the second year Idea Scholars have their own dedicated mentor. And that mentor works with those students both individually, so they meet with the students anywhere from 2 to 4 times a semester, again, doing that check-in at the beginning of the semester, checking in again around midterms, and then wrapping up at the end of the semester. But they are also asked to bring these students together as a cohort at least once per semester. And like folks mentioned before, this is just to build out a group rapport. Boston can be a very different culture than a lot of the other places these students come from. So sometimes it's helpful for a student to have somebody who's from home in their group, just to know and to reminisce about what pizza is like in Chicago or in New York or something like that. And then also the students and the mentor can work together as a group to help students troubleshoot any issues or celebrate any victories that the students have. Finally, there's the posse model, which many folks are familiar with in the audience. The posse mentors work with a group of 10 students per year. So we get 10 students each year from Posse Atlanta and 10 students each year from Posse Bay Area and the San Francisco Bay Area of California. And again, each cohort of these students has their own dedicated mentor. That mentor works with these students both individually and as a group, meeting with the students individually every other week and meeting with the whole group of students once a week for those first 2 years of the students' time at BU. So this, like as mentioned before, this is quite an intensive, time-intensive mentoring experience. It's a time-intensive experience for the students as well, but it really works to build that community of Posse scholars on campus. And all of these mentors at BU receive a training that's about a half day over the summer. So we focus on, working with undergrads, communication skills, mentoring best practices. We work with a variety of faculty and staff. Some of the staff mentors who we have don't generally work with undergraduate students. We get mentors who are in, BU's legal department. We get mentors from IT. We get mentors who only teach graduate students. So we really want our mentors to start off all on the same level of knowledge about mentoring. And we also talk about those high impact practices that both Laurie and Mike mentioned, and talk about the importance of those practices for our students. And we go over all of BU's undergraduate resources. So, BU is a very big place, and some folks can get, kind of siloed into their own area of knowledge. So this helps people understand exactly what it is that students can take advantage of while they're here. So if we go on to the next slide, we'll get to see this time for the first time ever, we were able to survey our mentees to see what their experience has been like with their mentors. So talking about their typical interactions with their mentor, what what do students discuss with their mentor? We sent this survey out to about 350 students, and over 90 students responded. So that's about a 25% response rate. So we have some pretty meaty data to look at to see how our students perceive their working with their mentors. Obviously, academics is a big area of discussion. These students are here to learn. They're here to be students and scholars. So this can reflect that. But students talk to their mentors more about, choosing majors. Which major is the right major for me? Do I want to go into something else? Am I really meant to be a doctor? They have those kinds of discussions with their mentors instead of just, what class should I take and when can I take it? That kind of thing. Volunteering is also a big topic of conversation, in large part because we have a sizable population of students whose scholarship requires them to volunteer each semester. Our BPS community scholars have a volunteer requirement attached to their agreeing to come to BU. So they talk to their mentors about their volunteer plan, what their interests are in terms of volunteering, whether they can use that volunteering experience on their resume when they apply to that internship, when they apply to that job. And at the bottom, I just want folks to take a look and see that almost half of the respondents to the survey talk to their mentor about their personal lives, their family, their friends, their relationships. And this is really like our ultimate goal for the mentoring relationship with their mentees, is that the mentee becomes comfortable going to their mentor with these personal issues, going to their mentor to, talk about everything you see on this list and more. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So we've already talked a little bit about the importance of high impact practices, especially on the students that we serve. So we always encourage our mentors to talk about these high impact practices with their students. And one of the most popular areas of interest that students talk to their mentors about is internships. That's because we deliberately push out internship information to our students. We plug the Center for Career Development. We plug the internships that are sent to us by external partners and external folks. There are internships that are specific to some of the populations that we work with. So there are internships that are specifically for POSSE scholars. There are internships that we learn about that are specific to graduates of Boston Public Schools or people who live in Boston. So every time we learn about a new internship, not only do we send it to the students who can apply, we send it to their mentors as well, just to say, hey, your student received this email. The next time you talk to them, make sure you plug this internship. Another area that folks talk about a lot is studying abroad. I think that this has to do with the fact that we've had a study abroad information session the past 2 years, and we'll have another one in about a month or so. And not only do we invite students to attend these events, we also invite their mentors. So that way the student has a buddy to go with if they don't know anybody who's going to be attending. And then we also adapted, as part of the survey, we adapted an REU survey to talk about the attributes that we hope our mentors display for their students. So what we can see from the responses is that almost all of the students either somewhat agree that their mentor has these attributes, agree, or strongly agree. So they agree their mentor was accessible, they agree that their mentor was approachable or demonstrated knowledge in an area of need. So these are really important things for us to take as we think about how we're going to train our mentors and work with our mentors in the future. And now Mike's going to talk a little bit about the outcomes of all of our students.
Great, thanks, Claire. And I just want to highlight one other, thank you for walking through us a lot of data. Highlight one other thing that is part of this survey, and it was in addition to the REU survey that we adapted a NESE survey that was administered, and it really looked at 3 key elements. My mentor actively listened to me, my mentor respected my identity and culture, and my mentor cared about my overall well-being. And And again, you see most of the responses are here. Ideally, we want to get the strongly disagree, and somewhat disagree. We want those numbers to be 0. So some of our next steps here will be, we offered students an opportunity to talk to us about their responses. While none did on this survey except to say great things about their mentor, we do want to drill down into this data and try to figure out, all right, how can we improve our mentor training practices so that we get these to 0, and that that we're all in that somewhat agree, and strongly agree for the criteria that you see on this screen. Just advance the next slide. So some of our program outcomes. So an important thing to frame this with is that Menino, BPS, Community, and Posse are the only scholar populations, as I noted in our previous slide, that actually have 6-year graduation rates. So when you compare the 6-year graduation rates, the most recent one with publicly available data is our class of 2017, you'll see that the 6-year completion rate for the BU overall class of 2017 was 88%. All of our scholar populations had graduation rates higher than that. And so based on that quantitative measure, in addition to some of the qualitative data that we just presented, is that we feel that we're getting some of the outcomes that, that we're hoping for, both with student engagement while they're on campus, and then ultimately that degree attainment, which is critical to students' next steps and for life beyond college. So here is all of our contact information. As I had mentioned earlier, this session is being recorded. I see there are some questions in the Q&A that we can either try to answer by typing. I see a question about QuestBridge, and I don't know if we want to, John or Brittney, do you want to answer that question live about QuestBridge?
Sure, Mike. Yes, so thanks for the question. There have been a couple questions circling about QuestBridge, and that is our newest partnership, just recently announced. We're very excited about working with QuestBridge out in California. Now there are 45 partner institutions. So, the question is, what are we looking to enroll through our partnership with QuestBridge? And it's tough to know what the interest will be in Boston University. We're excited about the possibility, but we expect that we might enroll between 20 and 30 students per class into Boston University through QuestBridge. And we don't have any specific goals in terms of geographic specific areas that we're looking for. It really is just looking for the best match to Boston University, and for the students, that Boston University would be a good match for them. So that's really where we're looking, and we're excited about the partnership.
Great, thanks, John. I see a question in there about BPS application numbers. To the question is, I've heard that BPS student numbers are down this year applying to public universities. I'm wondering if you are seeing the same phenomenon. So in other words, a drop in BPS applications to Boston University.
No, we have not seen that. If anything, we've seen a steady increase.
Another question is, can you elaborate on BU strategies and processes for recruiting faculty, staff, mentors to these partnership programs? So I'll start an answer, and maybe Claire, you can hop in as well. So we do pretty extensive outreach, both through just this past earlier this month, an email was sent out from Dean Shard and Christine McGuire, who's the Vice President of Enrollment and Student Administration, along with myself. So that went to all the deans, both on the Charles River campus and the medical campus, with a solicitation for mentors for this year. And then maybe Claire, if you have a moment to put in the chat at some point before we leave we don't have the chat. The mentor application is on our website. And so we can get that information to anybody who wants some follow-up information. Just email either Claire or I, our emails are there. And we're happy to get you next steps on applying to mentors. And then Claire, do you want to talk about the mentor information session that we ran just 2 days ago?
Sure. My philosophy for mentors is always be recruiting. So while our formal recruitment season starts in the spring so that we can line folks up for students matriculating in the fall, I'm always happy to talk about mentoring. So the way we generally run recruitment info sessions is the prospective mentors have a chance to speak in small groups with the current mentors in our various programs, because I think it's more effective for folks to learn about mentoring directly from the horse's mouth. I am a mentor myself for the BPS community service program, so I can speak to that experience, but I may not be able to talk about mentoring for an IDEA scholar or for a POSSE scholar. So it's best for prospective mentors to be connected with people who do have that experience. We also this year had some student voices. So a few students joined us at our virtual information session and talked about their experiences with their mentors. So I think that just added a depth of information that we hadn't had in previous years, because this year it's a lot easier to just log into an event and talk for an hour and then log back out than it is to run up and down Commonwealth Avenue, get across campus to an information session for something. So I hope that answers the question for the most part. And like Mike said, I'm more than happy to talk to folks one-on-one or answer any emails with additional questions.
Great, thanks, Claire. I know we've got about 3 minutes left. We do want to try to end promptly at 4. I do see a question about, have you partnered with any graduate schools at BU, specifically programs do you work with? We do partner a lot with the Med Campus, and Reggie had mentioned that Upward Bound also partners with the Med Campus. In fact, one of the co-PIs for our Upward Bound Math Science grant is Jean Van Seventer. She's a faculty member in the School of Public Health. We also partner with the BEAMS program on the Med Campus, and this spring we'll be running an event on applying to graduate programs on the Med Campus, but also graduate programs in general. So we do a lot of cross-campus collaboration, and I know Upward Bound is partnered with the law school. We've reached out to other graduate schools on campus as well. So there is collaboration, but we're certainly open to more, because a goal is, helping students with those postgraduate plans. I think the last question that we have in the couple of minutes that we have remaining, follow-up question: how are mentors, mentees paired? Also, what is the mentor selection process? So Claire, in a minute or less, do you want to answer that question?
I'll do my best. So I'll start with the selection process. Mentors complete a mentor application that we'll send the link out to participants later. But that asks for a mentor's resume and a statement of interest in mentoring. So they talk about why they want to mentor, what they think they would bring to the program, things like that, similar to a cover letter for a job application. Mentors also have the chance to tick all of the boxes for the programs where they'd like to be considered as a mentor. So that kind of helps me narrow down the field for folks who are interested in this program versus that program. And, we kind of go by application number versus number of students or number of partnerships where we need mentors for each year. And then for the community service mentees, because that is just individual mentoring and not building out a cohort, I do send out an additional survey both to those mentors and to their potential mentees that gets a little bit more information about their interests, their hobbies, their passions. So I can pair, if there's some professor of science who is also interested in photography, I can pair them with a student who may be in the School of Hospitality, but is also interested in photography. So I can make more informed matches that way.
Great, thanks, Claire. We are just at 4 o'clock now. I want to make sure we end promptly, especially since this later airs on BNN. Professor Jeffrey L., I see your question, and I will definitely be in touch. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for this webinar. Again, our contact information, I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. We tried to get to as many participants' questions as possible. Thank you again for joining us for our webinar this evening. It is being recorded. Our contact information is there. We'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions. Thank you again, and take care. Bye now.